Hi everybody, I am Diana De Rosa. I am with the EQUUS Film Festival 2019. This is our 7th annual event. And I am with a group of people and we're going to be talking about traumatic brain injury. And so I want to get started and give everybody a chance to say who they are and a little bit about yourselves. So Vicki, let's start with you.
Okay, she would start with the person that has laryngitis. So, if you cannot hear me, just call. My name is Vicki Escobar, and I live in Kentucky, so I'm a local resident. I'm a teacher, trainer, and I was an inventor for many years, as well as a dressage rider, and a licensed official for the United States Equestrian Federation for 23 years. I had brain surgery in 1989, out of which I came with half of my body paralyzed. I no longer have hearing in my right ear, as they severed the hearing nerve and the balance nerve on my right side. So 40 years ago, I had to learn how to walk and talk and definitely how to ride, all at the same time after the surgery. So my traumatic brain injury was not from an accident, it was from a brain tumor. And the recovery was very similar to someone who has had an accident and injured their head. So that's who I am, and I'm happy to be here with you.
Hi, my name is Elle Brunswick-Hanks. This is the first time I think I've spoken to more than 3 people at a time. So thank you for your patience. I live in Bucks County, Pennsylvania, but I grew up in Saratoga Springs, New York. I was a horse-crazy kid with horse-crazy friends, and that was the one love of my life. The other was working with children. I would work with my cousins up in Canada, my brother and sister. I would give my cats detentions. I loved it, so I went on to become a special education teacher. I taught in Camden, New Jersey for about 7 years, and then I did a complete 180 and taught at Central Bucks, junior high, almost, let's see, 19 years, same school, same grade, 8th grade. What would have been the start of my 20th year at Central Bucks, I went into my usual routine of waking up my 9th grade students by kind of running around and encouraging them to wake up, get the water bottles out, get the pencils up. I had a kind of an elevated classroom in one part where I could do all kinds of computer interactive activities. And I wound up tripping over a laptop cord that was charging. Pretty much went straight up and flat down. I was unconscious when I left. I had no idea that that would be my last day in that school, in any school, in a teaching capacity, because I never recovered enough to return. So even though besides my eye, which was spurting blood, most of my injuries were internal, and at the trauma center I was diagnosed with traumatic brain injury as well as a spinal cord injury. Months, years of different kinds of therapies, all kinds of different therapies, and surgeries for my spinal cord recovery. And I'm still in therapies. And my story's long, and people have a lot to say, but working at a therapeutic equestrian center was more than a perfect match. It set me on my road to recovery, to return to riding, and gave me the confidence to buy my first horse. Thank you for listening.
My name's Lisa Gaddy. I'm the CEO and founder of Palomine Equestrian, one of those therapeutic riding centers. that you were just talking about, that one of our populations happens to be traumatic brain injury for children and adults. And we are very proud to be here this weekend because our documentary was just shown on the screen right behind us. And Vanessa will share why.
Actually, I want to interject something. I think it's pretty impressive when you look at these people that if you didn't hear their story, you wouldn't realize that it exists. You know, I worked with Christopher Reeve, for those who don't know, he's Superman, for 8 years, and he was in a wheelchair. And it's funny, but that's what I thought. I thought to myself, I wish that that man would have been able to walk again. And it looks to me so far like you guys have been really fortunate to have the horse to help you get back to being very much normal and not even being able to know that you went through what you went through. So let's continue to share these stories.
Hi, my name is Vanessa Hudson. I'm from Brooklyn, New York, and I'm a producer and director with Vice Media. A film just screened. It's called Inspired by Sport, Palamine Equestrian. Horses were always the first love of my life. I've learned so much just from growing up with horses, and I've had the amazing opportunity to work at Palamine for the past 10 years. I teach various therapeutic riding lessons to students, both riding and on the ground. And right now we're working on documentaries for the Olympic Channel, and we pitched an idea of telling inspiring stories about sports. And when that came through, I immediately thought of Palamine, and I threw their name in the hat for to make this piece about them. So making this piece was a dream come true, and I thank all of you guys for sharing your stories, because I think the more we can share our stories and the more we can talk about horses and how they can help us, I think it's a beautiful message to spread. So thank you guys.
Hi, my name's Tori Phelps, and 11 years ago I was over in New Zealand working on a thoroughbred farm and got in a car accident and got a traumatic brain injury. And they originally told my family and everybody that I was going to be fully paralyzed my left side. Thankfully it's not paralyzed, it's just a lot weaker. And all I wanted to do was get back to horses. And while I was in the recovery place in New Zealand, they brought a pony into my room, and I still hadn't been able to move very much, and the pony started like nuzzling me, and I reached over with my arm was supposed to be paralyzed and smacked the pony. To get out of here. And all I wanted to do was get back to horses, and so I had to stay over in New Zealand for 3 months until I could fly home. I went to the Rehab Institute of Chicago for a little bit, did an operation there, and all I wanted to do was get back to Kentucky. So I went to UK, started working on thoroughbred farms, and all I wanted to do was get back down here. So thankfully in 2010, we got to move on to a 7-acre farm in Midway. So I have horses at home, and in 2013, I thankfully had a group of people I rode with before, and so they knew how I used to be able to ride, and we found the perfect horse for me, so I get to ride and get to do eventing again. And I was like, I don't know what else to say. That's your story. Yeah.
I'm Barb Phelps, I'm Tori's mother. I just wanted to speak to the horse community as a whole. I've never met more supportive people in my entire life. In New Zealand, the thoroughbred farm that she was working for, the people gave us a house, they gave us a car, the medical care was all free, thank you God. And it was just unbelievable. And people in Lexington did fundraisers for her, people in Ireland did fundraisers for her, people in New Zealand did fundraisers for her. It was just incredible. And coming back here to find people who would believe it's not a liability everybody wants to take on to put someone with a brain injury on a retired thoroughbred. And this horse has been magic for her, and the people that she's met and the horses that she's interacted with have been incredible. And mostly I have to thank my son, because he purchased the farm for us so we could live our dream down here. So we've got horses at home that Tori takes care of, and she rides Tigger, the saint. Everybody in the barn wants to ride this gentle giant.
73.
73. And she actually went cross country this year for the first time in 11 years. And her trainer said she's never had anything mean so much to her as watching her cross the finish line on this horse.
All right, I'm Brittany Halstead, and I'm from Nashville, Tennessee. And it all started with my grandparents when I was, a year old. And they raised cows, and they always had a couple quarter horses around, and so that was my thing that I had to do, was ride with my granddaddy all the time. And then when I was 11, my mom put me in hunter jumper lessons, and it just took off from there. And I've just been a rider and trainer for show jumping and hunters and also polo. And so I went down to Argentina 5 years ago and was riding with the Olympic rider Luis Muñozco. And then a car accident happened, and I didn't have a seatbelt on, and we were leaving a polo party, and the sun was coming up, and I was talking to the manager. I'm like, we have to get on horses in a couple hours. Like, we need to go. And then I wake up at Vanderbilt in Nashville and see all my friends and family, and that was the last thing I remember. But everyone's told me that it was a head-on collision, and the driver of the other car died on the scene, and I was put in a coma for 2 weeks, and then medical jet to Vanderbilt, and was in the hospital for a couple months. And all I wanted to do was just like, Tori, just get on the horse, I wanna ride. So, and I've also been teaching therapeutic riding for 13 years. And so I was the instructor for a long time, and then I was the student of therapeutic riding. So just getting to see both sides of the story it's pretty incredible. And then I actually went back down to Argentina in February and rode with the Olympic rider on those, top level horses again. And it took a good solid 4 years of like every single therapy you know of, which I would say vision therapy was, did you do vision therapy?
I do.
Okay, do y'all know what vision therapy is?
It's my third round.
That is it's like a miraculous therapy, I think. Because I was prescribed special yoked prism glasses and wore them for a year and a half, and now I'm back in the saddle, training horses again, so yeah.
We all hear the word horses helped us, but I think we need to make it clearer than that. So I want each of you to take a turn and be more specific. What is it for each of you? How did the horses help you? What was it that happened? What was that transformation? Make it just a little bit clearer on how they were really there for you, and what made that difference for you to get where you were today.
Well, like you, I rode from the time I was an infant. My grandmother sat me on a horse in front of her when I was a baby. So I rode all my young life, and then married and lived in the city. So for a brief period of time, I didn't have any horses to deal with. When I had my surgery, part of the recovery of my surgery was that I had ridden in Texas for a friend and exercised his horses before I had the surgery. I had fluctuating ear loss and vertigo, and that's when they discovered the tumor. So when they went in and did the surgery, I was in a coma for 10 days, and obviously didn't know anything, and couldn't talk because I couldn't make myself understood. So my very first outing 3 months after the surgery, a friend took me to this man's farm that I worked for, and he said, "Oh my goodness, you just have to sit right here and wait, because I've got 2 horses that we're rescuing, and you're just gonna be so angry." And I said, "Okay." So they sat me down at a picnic table and unloaded these 2 emaciated horses. One was 16'2", and the other one was barely 15 hands. So very different heights. Because I was in Texas and I was in a cowboy barn, nobody even looked at the tall girl. Everybody looked at the short girl. So I said, "Can I look at the tall one?" So they brought her over to where I was. She was 16'2". For those of you that are horse people, she weighed 850 pounds. So I said, "Oh my gosh, I want her. Can I have her?" And the guy said, "Yeah, you can have her, but what in the world are you going to do with her? You can't walk." "What do you think you're going to do?" I said, "I don't care." She stood right there, ground tight, right next to me, and never moved for 2 hours. People helped me walk over. I rented a stall that day and called the veterinarian and said, "If you can come and look for her, at her, and see that she doesn't have some congenital, contagious, horrible disease, I would like to have her." And so the vet came. This was on the last 2 days of March, and it was on a weekend. So on Monday morning, April Fool's Day, I purchased Alibi, Blaze's Alibi. We began our recovery together. She held me up. She taught me how to walk. She taught me how to feel. And 2 years later, we were eventing with everyone around us telling us how very crazy we were. So she was mine for 30 years, and she was my very best friend ever. She's the reason I am here. She's the reason that I teach. She's the reason that I train. I have 8 horses at home that I ride personally. I have 6 dogs, 5 cats, It's the farming story. My son purchased a farm for me in June of 2018. I live on those 20 acres by myself with my animals, and I do all my work myself.
Excuse me. Growing up in Saratoga Springs, as I mentioned before, my friends and I, we did our Western lessons, but our main form of horse riding was sometimes bareback, most usually, and it was about speed. And we loved it, and we were crazy, and we had a blast. I've always loved them, but life happens, college happens. I've had dogs, but I hadn't had very much other than the occasional trail ride. So 3 years ago, after my injury, and I was trying to recover into my injury, maybe 5-6 months, and my concussion specialist thought it would be wonderful if I could volunteer, because due to some anxiety and depression and difficulty even getting from my couch to the refrigerator, getting out a sentence without stuttering and crying and breaking out in hives, I was in a bad place. So I started with a half an hour a week at Ivy Hill Therapeutic Equestrian Facility, and the intellectual part of me knew this was going to be a perfect match. Love the horses, comfortable with horses, love kids. I knew that, that was no surprise. But what was a surprise was how much I started to improve. Months went on, turned into years, physically, emotionally, cognitively. I was learning. I was learning patterns. I was learning new things all the time. I was watching these miracles. You know, the little girl with cerebral palsy who struggles to stand in one arm, and she'd stand up on the step stool and do as much as her little body could do. And I felt, it was just amazing. I had to be in the moment with that, where I had to do my breathing. I could not bring any of that with me. And I learned that when I was cleared after a couple years to ride there. So now I was one of the students, and I had a fjord named Flash with this really cool mohawk and big brown eyes, and I loved him. He was like a teddy bear. And I was upset about something that day, don't know what, but I was grooming him, and all of a sudden I saw him go, it was just really weird. So I called the barn manager. I said, something's going on. She said, he is just echoing your feeling. He wants to take away those bad feelings. And I had never had that. I had a lot, never that. And Flash was my entree into beginning to ride as a student in the English style of training. And then I eventually moved on to another farm, but I took lessons there for over a year. And the improvements were incredible. To the extent that my husband, who has back problems, is now taking lessons because he saw what it has done for me in all those ways. Thank you.
Mine's going to be a little bit different from a different perspective as far as a personal student of mine who I taught for a while, who was a survivor of a traumatic brain injury, and I feel like it was just yesterday. He's now moved on, and I think probably why it's so vivid is because he, after his accident, he was left in a chair, and he came to me all dressed in a suit one day, suit and tie, in a chair, and he said, it was from an accident, and I was always a daredevil and a risk taker, rock climber, jumped out of an airplane, and the only thing I never did was ride a horse. So I need to conquer this. And, but I don't want any help. Okay. So what is that gonna look like to you? I don't want any help. I don't want you to hold me. I don't want anything, no lead line, no nothing. I don't want anything. And I'm thinking, okay, that's liability waiting to happen, but all right, don't worry about it. So we start out, and he's serious, no help. So of course our steadfast quarter horse, nothing's gonna happen. And 1 week after the next, adaptive tack. And he's certainly a risk taker. He, of course, wants to start going right from the halt, right to the lope. And, but I find it so interesting because he shows up in a suit most of the time. And he wants to mount and dismount lots of times by himself, and he really rarely wants help. Until, months passed by, and there was one Monday night, he comes in, and he was not a sensitive man by any stretch of the imagination. And he said, I'm leaving my job. I said, okay, do you want to talk about it? he said, it's because of this place, it's because of the horse. I said, okay, and he said, I'm going to work for a nonprofit. The horse actually has given me exactly what I needed to know after my accident. I said, all right. And he said, this is it. I am so sick and tired of looking up at people. I hate it. I don't want to do it anymore. They don't take me seriously. And when I'm on the horse, I feel like I'm either looking equally, finally, at people, or looking maybe a little down. But it's given me the confidence to say, I don't want to look up anymore to either negotiate deals, and I'm in the banking business, I don't want to do it. So I'm working for a nonprofit in the spinal cord and TBI industry, and I'm going to write grants, and I'm going to change the course of my life. Thank you so much. And I never saw him again. But I feel like the little quarter horse that's now going to be 24 years old has given him like this new look on life. That's all he needed. And in my heart, I feel like that's what he needed to move on. And it was just this little tiny thing that he was always in the industry before his accident. But now, because of the way he ambulated, which was different, it's just the change and the shift in his life that had left him like this, but he just didn't know how to move on, and that's what DW did for him.
Sorry, I was waiting for her to go. Anyways.
So, we always talk about how horses help us. But I think, we probably have mostly horse people in here, but non-horse people as well. And it's easy to say that horses helped us, but I think we need to be more specific. What specifically was it? How did they help you? Was it the movement? Was it, think about the stories that these people tell. How did they really get to the heart and soul to help you?
Sorry. Like I said before, all I wanted to do was get back to horses and get back to riding. And when we first got back, the first horse I got to ride was a therapeutic riding horse. And I didn't know this, but my mom told me that I wasn't sitting up straight or standing up straight at all before that. Once I got on the horse, my muscle memories kicked back in, and I sat exactly to sit up straight, and everything, so the movement and just being back on the horse just helped me remember how my body was supposed to be. And I wasn't walking, I wasn't walking greatly, but the movement of the horse just helped me remember how my muscles are supposed to work. And I've said it before, the horse has been the best therapist for me. I've been in therapy straight from the accident and still now. But the horse gives you the sense of responsibility, the companionship, just knowing that he needs me to do stuff for him, and he'll do whatever he can to help me. And I don't know, it's just got me. I've lost a lot of confidence since the accident, and because of him, I've been able to become more confident. Just being able to do what much lower level than what I was doing before, but just being able to vent again and do the kind of riding I was doing before. I was like, okay, well, we'll step back to being closer to my old normal. So he's just the best. I don't know what else to say.
Yeah, when Tori started with therapeutic horses, she's kind of been in no man's land the whole time. They said, you're too good for this. I'm going, okay, she's
I wasn't disabled enough to do.
Yeah, you're disabled enough to do therapeutic riding. I went, okay, but she's not able enough to ride independently. So we struggled with that for a while, and finally a friend took this horse that had been to the Olympics. I don't know. Anyways, he'd been everywhere. And he was older, and she said, this guy will take care of her. And this was a girl that she's known ever since college.
I've known her since 2001.
Yeah. And she said he will take care of her. And I'm going, oh my God, what are we doing? So she gets on him, rides him for 2 years, and it's all coming back. And we said, finally, you need to get your own horse. And her trainer found Tigger, 17.3, and everybody's going, that is a long way to fall. Why are you getting such a big horse? And I said, it's also a long way to reach. Tori does not like to use her left hand. She still has left side weakness, but you cannot put a saddle on a 17.3 hand horse with one hand. You cannot put a bridle on a 17.3 hand horse with one hand. So it forces her not only to get out of bed when you said getting out of bed, I went, yeah. Gives her someplace to go, gives her something to do, it gives her direction, it gives her a place in a community. And memorizing things, you know, if I asked her to do 4 things, it would go. But if she's in a jumper class and she has to memorize a course like this, it happens because she cares about that. So just having something that motivates you, that can give you a whole lifestyle along with it, it's been incredible.
So a month after I got out of the hospital, all I wanted to do was ride horses, just like, that's all I wanted to do in life, ride horses. So my friend, she is a trainer, and my mom would drive me to her place, and I would ride the oldest and laziest school pony of all of them. And my perception of space was like totally gone. Like I would be riding and I'd be like, I feel like I'm in outer space. Like, what's going on? And if I could trot all the way down the long side, like, whoa, that was a big deal. And then also, I mean, like, my mom had to help me put clothes on and, you know, take a bath and all that. So I was really out of it and stuff. And then that was in the winter because, yeah, it was actually like a Christmas miracle. I flew home from Argentina in a coma still on Christmas Eve. But I was alive and ready to get back on the horse as soon as I got out of the hospital. And then polo season comes around in Nashville, and my friend is like, hey, you know, I know you wrote that article for Path about how polo is a good, like, therapeutic sport and all that, and I have a polo pony that you can ride. And I'm like, okay, I'll do that. And then after the season, he was like, you know, I'm just gonna give you this horse. I was like, okay, thanks. And so for me my mom was still driving me to the barn because I couldn't drive for like a year and a half. And for that polo pony to just come to the gate when I would get there and then just stand in the cross ties just as calm as could be and able me to, you know, be able to put on all the tack very easily and then ride her for maybe 5 minutes and then it got to 10 minutes and that was like, whoa, big deal. But my perception of time was also like, I had no perception of time. But it's just the ground manners of that horse and her demeanor that allowed me to be able to feel like I was doing so much. I mean, if it was your regular hunter jumper horse that was anxious to get in the ring and that kind of stuff, there's no way I would have been able to do this stuff at that phase I was in. And two, I think just, I don't know, I even took her over some little cross rails and she would like point her ear back and be like, okay, 2-point, like, come on, here we go. And then I would just, you know, 2-point over the little X, and that was just like, whoa, an amazing big deal. And there were a good handful of times my mom had to take me to the ER after I would ride too, because my body like couldn't sweat, and it was in the middle of summer in Nashville, and I just got the migraines and had to get fluids pumped into me and all that, but I didn't care. I would sleep for like a couple days in bed, and all I wanted to do, Mom, I want to go back to the barn. I gotta get on the horse. And that horse just, like, she just became closer and closer to me, and so I just grew that companionship, and then the self-confidence, like, that comes back around, and then this past summer down in Wellington, I was staying at Santa Clara Polo Club, and there were 2 retired polo ponies that I was rehoming. So yeah, let me back up a little actually. So I founded Replay Polo, and it's a 501c3 organization to save retired polo ponies. And so I had these 2 polo ponies in Wellington, and I was the only one there at the polo club off season, just with those 2 horses and taking care of them every single day. And one of them was injured and doing, icing it every day and all that. And just watching those 2 horses just become, like, one of them was just healing more. And then the other one, I actually took him to Global in Wellington in the ticketed warm-up ring, and he just jumped right over all those jumps, like he had been doing it his whole life. And he had never been in a horse show grounds before. So just, yeah, it's that confidence of, okay, I can actually train a horse again. No, I'm not going to train a 3-year-old or a 4-year-old horse to go over jumps, but I can train a 10-year-old polo pony to go do another job. So yeah, they just give you the friendship and the confidence.
Wow.
I'm going to open this up to questions now, if anybody does have any questions. But before I do that, I'm going to prepare you all for my semi-last question. I think one of the hardest things is to keep an answer very tight. So that's 1 or 2 sentences. I want you to, in 1 or 2 sentences, to recall one moment. One moment when you looked into a horse's eyes, or one moment when it clicked that you had become a different person, that you'd gotten that confidence. And when was it that clicked? But I want you to do it in 2 sentences. So keep that in mind. And then also when you do that, you're going to just let people know how they can get in touch with you. Do I have any questions from the audience? And here I was going to try to make sure I gave you all some time. So no one has any questions? Okay, go for it.
Everybody up here is a woman, and when I ride, most of the people I ride with are women. Do you think there's this special bond between horses and women, or is this just, I don't know, just happen that way?
I'm going to turn this one over to you. I think that you probably dealt with, each of us is telling your own stories, but you've dealt with more than one. So what's that answer for you?
I wish there were more men. We always say that at the bar. Ironically, this past year, we have been inundated with more men volunteers and more men staff. But we have, with this specific population actually, we are half and half, I would say, 50% men and women with this specific population. So is that a sufficient answer? I mean, in the industry, just in general, I don't know, I always think as a little girl, everyone says, oh, it's a little girl sport, right? Girls and horses. But specifically with this panel, it's 50, for Palomine, 50%. It breaks down evenly.
I think that part of what I've noticed over the years, when I was a very young woman, when I was a very young girl, most of the riders were men. The market changed, women changed. What women did changed. I don't think that the number of men who ride has changed. I think there are still thousands of men who ride. They just they're not as loud. They're not as vocal. They're not as emotional publicly as women are. And so we get to be listened to a whole lot more than some men do. But I have worked in the Western riding industry, in the English riding industry, in the old classical dressage, in the old classical disciplines of all kinds. And I will tell you, there are quite a few men involved. They just don't seem to want to be out there in front of 1 million people as much as the women do. But there are, where I work in Kentucky, I would venture to say it's more than 50-50. I would venture to say that the male population in the horse population relationship in Kentucky is probably more 80 to 20. There is a huge number of men who participate in Western disciplines, who participate in the racing industry, and who generally have the majority of the administrative work on the farms. So women have made an impact, but men are still a huge, huge portion of the horse population. My grandparents were from Mississippi. I lived in Texas for 25 years, and I've been in Kentucky for 15 years. And I will tell you, there are still a huge number of men involved with horses. It's just they're not as vocal as we are.
Do I have it? Okay, I've got a question up there in the corner. Speak loud.
I'll try. This is to the women who are going through what they're going through. Have you, I think it's kind of twofold. A little opportunity there. Have you got to the point yet in your journey where you realize not what a disadvantage you have or the disability, but actually how strong you have been to get to the point that you've gotten through this injury? Or are you still where the injury still has the better of you, and has the horse helped you realizing your strength in your supposed disability? Did you all get where I was coming from?
Totally, I think that, yeah, you know, you're all progressing along, but you're still living it, you know, you're still living the past and stuff like that. So, who would like to? Let's choose 2 or 3 people to answer that. So we'll start with you.
I had about 3 different therapies at Good Shepherd Rehab. It's pretty much like a day hospital. So it could be a 4-hour day. And so I rented a locker, and before I got rid of everything in that locker, there was a sticker in there posted up that said, "I'm not where I want to be, but I'm not where I was." And that's something that I've seen a lot since then, but I think really living that, and if I can benefit from, even now, 3 years out of my injury, from a different type of vision therapy or a different type of sensory integration, and I progress about 10% more than I would have, then I think that's progress. I think there have been challenges, especially this past year, with participating in clinics and challenging myself. And the energy I got from that, and the confidence I got from that, and I just think it's layers. And I think we're moving forward, even if it's just baby steps, and sometimes it feels like 10 steps back, but you're moving in the right direction. So I really don't think I could have come that far that fast without being involved in programs that involved horses.
But can you see your strength now? I mean, can you see how strong you are now instead of, oh my God, look how disabled I am? Assuming
It's
that.
getting used to a new normal. I think now I'm a better listener because I have to be. I have to take the time to process what I'm hearing, because sometimes it feels like I'm lip reading because I don't understand anything you're saying. I feel like I'm a better writer because that was one of the things, that was a strong point. Reading was not, I was a math teacher and I couldn't add in my head any longer. So I focused on my strengths. So I think my writing has become better, my listening has become better. I think I'm more, I was always empathetic, but now I really get it. I really get it. I use those same strategies that I taught my kids who had learning disabilities, which is very humbling, but it's helping me process through a simple news article. So I do. I see different strengths, and it's a new normal, and that's okay.
All right, I'd like one other person to talk about that topic. It's a great book.
I definitely think that on horse and being on horses has helped me a lot in my confidence and everything. And like, I think it was like 3 or 4 years ago, or a little longer, but when I started competing again, I was embarrassed that I was doing starter. I'm like, why? Like, I don't know why I was embarrassed, but I used to be doing prelim. This is a joke. Why am I doing this tiny pretend stuff? And I had to sit back and talk to my therapist about it a lot, but not comparing to the old normal, like she was saying, it's a new normal. And my horses helped me to not be embarrassed, like, yeah, so I'm doing starter, but no one else in this class has a brain injury and had to really learn how to walk and talk and do everything. So, like, there's sometimes I just want to go tell a judge, I'm like, yeah, you want to tell me to stop moving my left arm and left leg? I'm like, I was supposed to be paralyzed, so you shut up. I'm like, you get on a 73 and horse and you do this. So it's taken a long time. I can't say that I'm 100% over it, over being embarrassed or whatever, but like you're saying, that I've done 2 full events, and I'm like, oh wow, I can do cross country, and my horse is so excited that he didn't do this because he did it with his old owner and he thought he was never going to do it again. And like, I'm like, yeah, I know I have a disability, but I just got to do the whole course and I didn't lose my stirrups, or I did everything, and I memorized the whole course, and so everything has helped me get a little bit past being disabled. Like, it feels weird to say disability, but it is.
You know, it's interesting because I can really relate to you saying empathy, working for Christopher Reeve and constantly being around people in wheelchairs that were totally paralyzed and couldn't move from their neck down. You do get a real, you know, every time I see a wheelchair now, I feel like I want to go up to the person and you know, talk to them and make them realize that I'm not looking at them any differently than I would anybody else. But we're getting down to that final time when it's going to be hard for you, but I want you all to keep it very tight. And I want you to recall that moment, that one thing, that 1 minute that sort of really made you feel like, you know, it's going to be okay. That this moment made it be okay, this horse and this what happened. And then also finish off by telling people how they can get in touch with you if they want to.
We were in an event in Texas. I was riding my cross-country portion of an eventing competition, and we got to the end, 2 sentences, got to the last 4 jumps. My helmet came over my eyes. I could not see. She took me through the last 4 jumps by herself. And I thought, okay, if I can live through this, and she can carry me through here, we've made it. We're gonna make it. That was it. My name is Victoria Esquivel. You can Google me. You can friend me on Facebook. I think that's the easiest way to find me. But you can find me on Facebook, and I'm happy to have as many friends as want to be with me.
July, on an extremely sweltering weekend, I participated in a clinic by Richard Shrike, and it was 3 days long. And when I got there with my lesson horse, quarter horse that I had ridden about 3 times, I saw people I knew from that barn who had won awards all over the place, all the shows, because I read about them. And I just thought, you're gonna just do the best that you can. And there were 16 people in that ring, and he had a megaphone, but I was able to participate a little more slowly, but nobody knew my history. Nobody knew. And I could do those patterns, and I did those obstacles, and I got off of that lesson horse, and I was drenched, and we all were, and I just hugged her so tight, and I came home to my husband, and I said, I can do this. I'm gonna go out, and I'm gonna do more clinics, and these people are award winners, and I kept up. And that she is my second favorite horse in the world, for that reason. I think Facebook is probably the easiest to get in touch with me too. L, one of the kings. Thank you.
It was 11 years ago. I pulled up to a barrel racing competition. There was a wild-eyed Appaloosa running around in the arena. People were screaming. Came running over. I looked in this horse's eye. There's just something about him. Negotiated the price. Wheeler dealer. He said no. I said, let me know when you're ready. A month went by. I bought him. He opened up our documentary. He's one of the best therapeutic horses you can ever imagine. He's saved more people's lives than you can ever imagine. Palomine, it's website pal-o-mine.org.
I'm going to answer this a little bit differently. So as a therapeutic riding instructor at Palomine, I'm just always amazed about the dependability and the versatility of all the horses in our herd, the way that they approach each student in a very unique way. And I think that's kind of where I draw my inspiration, is kind of seeing the connection of the kids and of our students with the horses.
I think that the one moment that cemented the relationship between my horse and I in my head, it was a couple of years ago. I was riding through my dressage test, having a really good ride, practicing for the show, and he tripped, and I shot straight to the ground, landed on my left shoulder, and shattered my collarbone. And the other people in the ring saw it. He should have landed on top of me, but he contorted his body and everything could have landed the other way. He's like, I can't land on her. So, like, he'll do anything possible to take care of me, and just being able to have that bond with him is fabulous.
Yeah, our orthopedic surgeon didn't believe any of that. He had seen me 6 months before, because I was leading the same horse up to a paddock, stepped on my shoe, and Pony Club training says never let go of the horse. Wrong. When they go up, you let go. I didn't. I came down on my shoulder, smashed my humerus, halfway down to my elbow. I have plate screws, everything. See this same surgeon 6 months later with her. Because this horse is trying to tell you something. I said, no, he's not. He's telling us that he's saving our lives here.
I wanted to also answer your question about being stronger, because you have to think about it, like everything was taken away from us during that accident, right? Except for our friends and family, they were there. And then our passion with these horses, like I just held on to that for all of my life and just kept never giving up with the passion of horses, and that is definitely what brought me to where I'm at today. I mean, there's no way I'd be this strong if it wasn't for the horses. And then, as far as that one moment, that was just this past summer on one of these replay polo ponies when I was taking a lesson, and to get these short-strided polo ponies to actually go the normal stride length down the line, it's pretty challenging. And I just couldn't ride every step of the way, and you know, like, my takeoff point was just wrong and all that. But, and for me to like multitask and listen to my instructor during all of that too, that was very difficult. And that last course that I did with him there at that one particular farm, I was like, oh my gosh, I did not miss a beat during that course, and I rode all the strides and got all my lead changes, and I really felt like my whole entire body was just back in sync with the horse again. And yeah, that took like 4.5 years to get there, but then yeah, it's just the best.
I think you'll all agree with me that this is just one thing that is so special about the EQUUS Film Festival. The fact that we can bring to you these stories, that you can sort of share and live with them what these women have all revealed today is one of the very special things that one of the reasons that Lisa Dierson created this EQUUS Film Festival, and why we continue it to create this platform so that we can continue to bring all these stories to you. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm Diana De Rosa, and we still have another 1.5 to go.